Hello, welcome back to the podcast Journey to Well. So today's going to be a really fun one because I haven't talked too much about red light therapy before. I talk a lot about it on my Instagram. If you don't already follow me on Instagram, I have a red light panel and I talk about some of the benefits, but we're going to go really deep with Bjørn Ekeberg. He is the CEO and co-founder of Recharge Health, also a philosopher of science. So he has so many fun kind of aligned pieces of history and background that we were chatting about before we started recording. So Bjorn, you know that if you've listened to my podcast, you know that I like to kind of hand over the reins and allow my guests to introduce themselves. So I would love a little bit about who you are, and maybe even we can kind of get into what even got you interested in red light therapy. Coming from philosopher of science to red light therapy is a super interesting switch over. So I would love to hear a little bit about that.
Thanks, Hannah, and it's a pleasure to be on. I'm very excited to have this conversation with you.
Mm.
And I was given a serendipitous kind of opportunity about 6 years ago. I was on track I've written a book about the basics of physics and cosmology from a philosophical perspective, and I had that as a kind of background. I've been dabbling with filmmaking and other things. Had a career path going very strongly in a certain direction. When I came across via now two of my co-founders that I knew from before, who had discovered a lot of research from NASA and PubMed studies that showed remarkable physiological effects when the human body is exposed to certain wavelengths of light in specific parts of the spectrum. This is near infrared and red light, which we can talk more about. But I was blown away because we haven't heard about this before, and the research is actually decades old. This is not something that was discovered yesterday.
Yeah.
NASA developed actually in the early 2000s prototypes for this for astronauts to heal faster in space. Kind of thing. So this is not new at all, but people don't know about it. And I realized when I dug into it that the reason we don't know about it is because it hasn't been made really accessible
Yeah.
to people. You kind of have to, as we'll get into, like sign up for a big panel, and like there's you have to be really, really into it and know your thing. And we wanted to create a device that is so easy to use that it can be embedded in everybody's home.
Mm.
And so I shared with my co-founders that we met 6 years ago kind of on a fluke, and one of them a medical doctor who's worked on this technology for decades and wanting to get it in the hands of people so they don't have to come to a clinic like hers,
Mm.
is let's make something that can be in everybody's homes.
Yeah.
Let's make this technology widely available. And I saw firsthand some of the effects and stuff, and I interviewed people, and yeah, I joined a train early on. I took a chance on this because I thought it's the most exciting opportunity to get to spread something that can benefit so many people.
Mm.
And I didn't know what I signed up for 6 years ago, but here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're now one of the purveyors of the more advanced light therapy solution, and working on ways to make this even more accessible for people and people to use, so everyone can have one.
Mm. I
That's
do
by
think
way of short introduction.
no, I love it. I love it. I do think that red light therapy is becoming more talked about. Although obviously one of the most exciting parts of having you on this podcast is even I don't know a lot of the science behind it. It's more just, oh, red light therapy is good for you. It's good for your skin, right? And we'll get there, like the
Hmm.
differences. But at least I would assume that a lot of my listeners, because this is kind of where I started, is just knowing there's benefits to your skin. It can help with anti-aging, which is very
Hmm.
important to women. And then I kind of stopped there for a long time until more recently I've gotten into the NIR, the different wavelength frequencies for penetrating deeper into your muscles and not just helping, surface level skin issues. So I would love to dive into, maybe this is just diving right in, but I'm like such a science person. I really love the data behind it. So I would love to dive into what are the differences between red light NIR, what the heck is NIR? And are there even more different frequencies than those for when we're talking red light? Obviously, there's different frequencies.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. Let's dive in. I can say from the outset that the research on this is there's quite a lot. There's thousands of studies already when we started,
Okay.
and there were about 6 years ago when we had our idea for how to make this. It was a very nichey kind of thing. Like we
Hmm.
saw there were sort of like biohackers that adopted it and started using it, and word was spreading that this was something, but it was still far from where it is today. So
Hmm.
in the time spent that we got our product first to market through development and then started selling it and finding our audience base, there's also been an explosion in awareness around red light therapy, the
Yeah.
cosmetic aspects especially. And there's also been an explosion of health tracking devices that people are wearing, like increasingly wearables to have data on themselves.
Yep.
This is part of a broader trend. Like we
Yeah.
saw this early and we kind of bet on this becoming more of a mainstream thing, that people are looking to improve their health, take health into their own hands, and they're looking for alternate ways, and are not really trusting that their regular doctor will give them the best health advice,
Hmm.
right? So there's a huge need and huge demand for thinking outside of the traditional medical healthcare system. And
Hmm.
what we felt we were sitting on was a potential solution that doesn't replace all of that, but it's like highly complementary and that people ought to know about.
Hmm.
Uh, at the same time as awareness has just exploded, and now every person I talk to, especially in the US, they've all heard of it, but
Yeah.
almost nobody really knows what it is unless they're using it. And it's a potential pitfall or point of confusion, at least, is that there's so many overlapping claims and benefits and different applications. And red light therapy is increasingly associated with skin and cosmetics
Yeah.
that you touched on. So part of the confusion is that the term red light therapy that we commonly use and that covers things like our device and panels, so on, is two types of wavelengths. So there's red light, and red light is very well demonstrated is great for skin. It improves collagen production, elastin in the skin. So it can be very beneficial to be exposed to relatively low dose, but consistent dose of red light.
Mm.
Uh, this comes from sunlight, the redness in sunlight. It's the same kind of wavelength as in the visible spectrum. So you'll see tons of masks and things on the market right now that are like basically red light devices.
Hmm.
However, the most powerful in the research and in the actual application of what we call red light therapy is in NIR, as you called it, near infrared light. So this is light that is just off the visible spectrum. It's in the infrared range, which is a whole sort of long bandwidth of the whole electromagnetic spectrum. If you're thinking about energy as a total field coming from the sun, infrared covers a large part of the spectrum. We can't see it, but we can feel it. It's associated with heat. So
Okay.
actually over 50% of the energy we get from the sun is in the infrared range.
Hmm.
So it's invisible to us, but we certainly feel it on a warm day. If you use a thermal camera, thermal imaging camera, you can scan across around you and you see when the sun is up, there is enormous reflection of infrared in nature and in like
Hmm.
leaves and rivers and so on. If you look at an urban landscape with asphalt, it's fully absorbed. There's nothing. It's
Hmm.
just absorbed into the heat. So infrared is around us all the time, and it's part of the natural spectrum of the sun. So near infrared is a specific part of that broader infrared range in which all the research is showing that between 800 to 880 nanometers, which is a part of the spectrum, something happens physiologically in the body that in a simplified sense is the healing response in the body. The biological explanation is the mitochondria, which are the organelles in your cells that are responsible for energy production. So your mitochondria, which make up a large part of your body, they're like really crucial to your cells and to your overall health.
Hmm.
They respond when they are exposed to this light by producing more energy. And what the cells do and what they're trained to do is to repair and recover, etc. So when you are able to expose them to the right dosage of that kind of light, they basically become much more effective at what they do. So they produce more energy at the cellular level, and then that kickstarts your body's natural healing process, but kind of turbocharged, right?
Mm.
So you can get results like 30-40% faster recovery times from a muscle injury, for example.
Okay.
Like not just marginal benefits, but like a significant improvement. So this is really what sort of blew us away. The red light we kind of knew about, and that's fine, and we had that built into our device, but having a strong near infrared component means that you're able to treat a whole range of things, muscular, skeletal types of conditions. And the trick here about near infrared, what makes it specifically so powerful, is that it's a long wavelength that is able
Mm.
to penetrate the skin. So we can't see it because it's too long for our eyes, but it's just long enough to be able to sneak past the skin. And if you have a device that goes straight on your skin, you can get 2-3 inches type penetration with the right dose. So
Mm.
if you think about that for a second, how deep you can go beneath the surface of the skin, just skin level, you're able to target like all your muscles, even some organs or your gut or anywhere, you're able to actually stimulate them with
Mm.
this kind of light. And so that, of course, has a lot of promise for like anyone with health concern, ranging from athletes and biohackers, but to more general people who just want an energy boost or a health boost. That
Does
goes
this
beyond skin deep.
does this do anything to your bones?
It also can, yeah, if you can reach the bones with the penetration,
Yeah.
there are studies showing effects on bone healing.
Yeah.
There
Like I'm
are
thinking if
very
you
clear
break or
research showing
fracture.
also stem cell production is another aspect that is also stimulated from this.
Okay.
But it's all then about having the right dosage at the right place so you're able to penetrate deeply. But
Mm.
that's the power of near infrared, and that's why we set our sights on developing a device that had a very powerful near infrared setting, because that way you're able to treat things in the body that go well beyond the skin.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah, so one of the things that I very briefly researched, and I'm sure that you can more eloquently speak on it, is with the dosage, as well as I'm curious because I know that we were just talking about your red light panel goes directly on your skin, but some research that I came across was kind of talking about the distance that you should have your near infrared light panel, because it's almost like, I mean, if you're not watching the video, it's almost like a prism. Is that what the shape is? It kind of comes out in a V. And so if you have it a little bit further away, it's able to cover a little bit more surface area. Although what you're saying, I assume it's just not penetrating as deep. But why did you create something, or why is it better to have something that goes on your skin? Is it just because it can penetrate a little bit deeper?
It can be much more effective and go deeper. So for
Okay.
those who are watching the video, I'll just show you. This is FlexBeam. This is a belt-like shape. Like
Hmm.
it's really a belt more than it's a panel with light pods. That beeping sound is me turning it off. I just want to show you what the lights look like.
They look
So this
purple
is
on the
red
camera.
and near infrared light. I'm going to look all very
Oh.
spacey for a second
Yeah.
or two, but it's got 3 light pods connected to a controller. This gives you basically it's the same power as in a large panel, but packed into a belt-like shape that you can wear.
Okay.
The reason you want to consider this kind of design, or like why you want it on the skin, is because when it's on the skin, you don't lose any of the energy and it all goes into the body.
Okay.
If you're standing 5-10 inches away from a panel, you are losing 80% of its power.
Hmm.
Like the
Wow.
light diffuses. So it's just it's actually very basic physics, right? That the further you are away, the less effect you can get
Yeah.
from the actual device. Now, the reason with your panel why you have to stand at a certain distance to it is twofold. One is that your panel is likely to get very hot.
Mm.
If you were to stick your skin very close to it,
Mhm.
it would have almost a burning kind of feeling. It would be too hot for you to be close to it. Uh, Panels also have very high electromagnetic frequency radiation, so-called EMFs. because
Okay.
they're plugged into the wall, and they're not encased or anything. They're just open lights. So when you do an EMF reading around something like a panel, it really is like it's quite a lot. It's almost
Yeah.
like level of a cell phone,
Yeah.
right? So you want to have a distance to be more safe, but you need to keep the same distance in order to be a consistent in your treatment.
Hmm.
So if you like for like one day you're just leaning further back from the panel, you can get like half the dose of what you got yesterday,
Yeah.
right? All of this is like it's when you really think about it, you get your head into it and you think about how the physics of it works, it is quite obvious, but it's not so easy to understand when you start out,
Yeah.
right? And panels are produced, we know like all the different panels, and some of them are great quality in terms of lights and so on. So I'm not going to talk them down and say that they are
Yeah.
bullshit. They're just it's a way of delivering light that is factory and production driven. They are basically they come out of the grow up industry. They are actually light for plants. And when they discovered that certain wavelengths were something that the human body responded to, they just basically replaced the light, used the same design, and pumped out panels.
Hmm.
So it's designed for plants and it's not really designed for humans. And we wanted to reverse that and actually design it from scratch, something that you can wear on the skin. So ours has a fan that cools it down. It has battery
Ah.
encasing so that there's no EMFs. And so we wanted to create something that is something you can wear and feel intimate with. You can even take to bed, that
Hmm.
is not just like a radiating lamp. That
Mm-hmm.
was the design principle we started with. Uh, but it's all really about effectiveness
Yeah.
at the end of
Okay.
the day, how effective your treatment is going to be.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about dosage because you keep saying that. What does that mean?
So dosage would be a measurement of how much output you have within a certain time window. It can be measured in various ways. There's measures called irradiance, which is expressed in milliwatts per square centimeter. These are like very like physics calculations, but that speak to the density of the light and the power output of the light. That can be calculated into how deep it goes and how much dose you get, like how many joules you get per area of coverage.
Okay.
That's all like very technical.
Yeah.
There is a dosing window that's established in the literature, which is quite wide. The overall sort of takeaway from all the overlapping research into different wavelengths and dosages is there is an optimal sweet spot window. If you have too little, you're not getting any effect, and if you have too much, your body overadapts quickly, and you're also not getting an effect.
Hmm.
So you want to make sure you have to have a powerful enough setting. That's step one. And most of the cheap lamps out there or simple belt stuff simply do not have enough output power. I see the
Okay.
vast majority of products I see coming out on the market and making claims from a physics perspective, it's not possible they can penetrate. They're just small diodes. They have no fans built in, so it's not hot enough. Like that's often a good sign. If your panel or your device has fans, it means at least the lights are powerful,
Ah.
right? So that's one thing you can look at. I would not buy anything that doesn't have a fan or a cooling solution,
Hmm.
because then it's more of a cosmetic effect.
Okay.
In order for the light to penetrate, which is what you want, it has to be strong enough,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
But on the other side, you also don't want to overdo it, and this is it's a common reaction we have for people who try our device or a panel. It often takes a few sessions to click in. I don't know how it was for you when you first experienced it to really feel like how it's working and if it's working,
Yeah.
like to get an effect. I don't know, how was it for you to when did you start feeling you had effect from it?
Yeah, so my panel actually is battery operated, so
Hmm.
it's not plugged in. And I've used it on my face. Honestly, when I just do the red light, I don't really think that I notice any difference. But when I do the NIR, I've been doing it on my back because I hurt my
Right.
back. And I do feel sensations. I don't know how really to explain it, but I feel
Hmm.
sensations and I do feel that my back is improving.
Yep.
But mine has a timer on it, so I can't do it longer than 12 minutes because it
Right.
turns off and then it won't turn
Yep.
back on because it's cooling down. So
Yep.
obviously after a couple minutes I could do another session, but I trust the 12-minute mark that that's
Yep.
all I'm supposed to do per day. And I think actually my directions were don't do it more than a couple times a week or maybe every other day. So I probably do it, maybe 2, 3 times a week. I try not to do too much, but I'll do it on different parts of my body.
Right. And these are good signs of the device itself as well. It's a short treatment window.
Yeah.
Like ours is 10 minutes. You
Okay.
can do 20 if you want, that's fine, but it's like we don't recommend an hour or like more than an hour because
Yeah.
what happens is the body adapts so much that you don't get the response you're after.
Hmm.
So some of the difficulty for a lot of people have assessing whether it works for them or not is this trial error phase, like, do I really feel it? And of course, the inner skeptic is like, I'm not sure. And
Is it
then,
placebo effect?
yeah, it's the placebo effect. And so, obviously it will help even more if you believe in it, you can get
Yeah.
effects, but you also want to like remain skeptical. So
Yeah.
anyway, we see how all users go through this. And I did the same thing when I first had the prototype. I had bought in science level, but I needed a few sessions to really feel like, can I feel it? Can I not?
Yeah.
This is what's sometimes referred to as the benefit gap of red light therapy. And it's just a sort of a user challenge because sometimes you need a little bit more time to feel really confident that you can see the effects.
Yeah.
And it depends on what you're treating. What we often see is because that aha moment comes, and it comes almost for everybody. Sometimes after 2 days, sometimes after 2 weeks. But at some point you click in that, you can really feel the difference over time.
Mm.
Then usually people get excited. And then you think more is better, right? It's just like, okay, now it really worked. You did 12 minutes on your back, and like now your back feels better. What if you just also do your legs and your arms and your shoulder one night,
Yeah,
and you just like, intuitively, this is where like it's a default setting we have in
it
our
is.
mind, that more is better, and once it's working, more of it would be good. However, this is not the case. This is part of the education around how to
Yeah.
use it appropriately. There is a sweet spot. And when you find that sweet spot, it is wide, it's not super narrow. It's like you have room to
Okay.
maneuver, but the point is overdoing it will not help you. And
Mm.
having too little, or as in just not a powerful enough device, will be just placebo.
Yeah. Is
Yeah.
this a trial and error kind of figuring out how much is too much and how little is, I mean, how little kind of makes sense to me. I think once you do research on the actual device you have and making sure that it's an ethical device and that makes sense to me. But the too much, especially since we are that way, like why not just take more? Why
Yeah, yeah.
why not just do more? It's been helping me. That's, yeah, is that like trial and error thing, or is there don't do it more than
Yeah,
this
we
amount?
set certain guidelines in the research. It's like you get averages and statistical ranges that are pretty consistent, right? So you
Okay.
can say overall it is within this dosing window of so and so many joules and so
Mm,
on over time. However, everybody's different, everybody's health state is different. So if you are a very active younger person who has a lot of energy already, your tolerance is higher. If you are, let's say, in like closing into retirement and you battle a lot of diseases in your life, you probably don't need as much, right? So there's a little bit of individual variation. We are working on like our future innovation concerns this actually making it more personalized. For now, we are offering guidelines for users just on general timing and protocols to follow. We have a medical doctor as part of the co-founding team who's developed protocols for everything from like arthritis and fibromyalgia type things and endometriosis type of complex medical conditions to a tennis elbow and like basic inflammation responses. So you can find good guidelines for placements, how often to use, and the intervals that you should take breaks and so on to follow.
okay.
Yeah. So
I
it
want
is a
to,
little bit trial and error,
yeah,
but within a certain range. And we try to help people as much as possible to find their own dose. And then you can gradually also increase from there once you see response,
okay.
right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to hear some stories. They can be personal of you,
Mhm.
family members, personal clients, or if you prefer to keep it research. I would love to hear some stories of this panel helped this situation.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many that it's hard to know where to start. I mean, we're closing in now on we're approaching 30,000 users so far
Yay.
of our device, and we see, of course, the red light therapy, like it's booming. Lots of people are trying it. Originally, I mean, we designed the whole device thinking about people with targeted injuries or musculoskeletal conditions, right? Because you can wrap it around a shoulder or an elbow
Yeah.
or something like this, and you can get light from all angles. So it's ideal for targeted spots. So we have a
Mm,
lot of, soccer players and tennis players and these kinds of things that it works very well for all musculoskeletal things. And we saw that very early and designed a device for that. However, when we put it out, people started using it for different things than we had thought. So one of the more arresting early stories I found that we started looking more into is around gut health, for example.
mm,
So we hadn't really thought of this, but I like personally intuitively when I got it, it's a nice warming kind of effect, but you can keep it close. So while I was meditating, I just put it on my stomach and just held it in place for 10 minutes,
yeah.
etc. And that just felt good for the nervous system, and we have more and more user cases now that suggest this is a popular use.
Sure.
However, then I started finding out that it had an effect on my gut. I could, without going into detail, you can kind of feel the day after that, oh, something happened here.
Hmm.
When you go to the bathroom, and then a couple of more days of using it, it's like something is changing in the whole gut and mostly in a positive way.
Yeah.
And then we found more research also and user stories to suggest that it helps really balance the gut bacteria. So the good bacteria kind of can fight off the bad ones, bring more regularity. And then, of course, the gut is linked to the brain through the
Mm,
neural system. So people also responding with more cognitive clarity from using it on their gut. So this has become like it's one kind of use case that we didn't think of initially.
mm.
We gathered more and more user stories that were compelling, and we did a recent survey. We found over 30% of FlexBeam users actually use it for their gut health, which
Wow.
also tells us something about general awareness of this actually. Like
Yeah.
when we started 5 or 10 years ago, like talking about your gut was like very marginal, and now it seems to be something that a lot of people are aware of.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I guess for me, it's an example of something that you can do with a device you can wear straight on your skin, for example, because you are able to penetrate more deeply.
Hmm.
So that you have a lot of light receptors in your stomach, and where you have the most mitochondria in your body are in all the organs. They are
Mm,
packed with mitochondria. So uh, our doctor on the team, who is very holistic and trained in like both TCM or traditional Chinese medicine, alongside with being a Western medical doctor, which is a really rare crossover.
yeah.
She uses it a lot for like she has ways of trying to assess organ imbalances and system
Mm,
imbalances, and then can use the light in this to shine directly on a liver, for example, or the kidneys.
wow.
And because of the penetration depth, you're able to stimulate the mitochondria in those organs,
Hmm.
right? So she even issued like a detox protocol. You can't use just any red light device for that, but ours with packed with near infrared light, you can use to target inner organs. So this is one application area that I personally like a lot, and I have a lot of stories about people um, or use cases where people report uh, sort of great improvements in a way that we didn't think about.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah. That's super interesting. I didn't think about that until you mentioned it to me last time we chatted, and I was like, oh, I guess you could use it on your gut health. So along the same lines, then let's talk a little bit about women's health because that was
yeah,
something else that you mentioned that's very interesting to me. You
yeah,
know that I do a lot of cycle alignment work with my clients, so it's not so much the cycle syncing of this is what you should be eating, this is how you should be exercising, because I feel like that's pretty easily approachable and we can gain a lot of information just via Google search of what should I be eating. So I do a little bit of that work with my clients. It's more aligning your energy and aligning your energies to where you are in your cycle. And you know, your energy as a woman is different in the ovulation phase versus the luteal phase. However, or in addition, a lot of my work is optimizing your cycle and harnessing the energy that you are in each phase as a female. And so this I think would be fascinating for anyone to listen to. Again, I never really considered red light as a tool in cycle alignment. So what is your experience with that? And what are, you know, if you have experience in that research, what are the benefits of what can red light therapy help with?
Yeah, so this again is another example of where red light, as in a mask, won't help you, but
Yeah.
where near infrared light actually can then penetrate and treat something.
Okay.
And it's another sort of discovery through our users and user feedback, led by our doctor, Dr. Zulia Frost. If you could have a whole show with her just explaining everything that you're interested in around hormonal alignment, red
Mm,
light's impact on both the melatonin cycle for circadian rhythm, but other hormonal balances in the body.
that's a
She can
huge
speak to
thing.
this much better than me. She's trained in it. I'm just
Yeah.
learning as I go
Yeah.
from
Maybe
this.
we will.
But it's really, what I can tell you is when we first got started and we launched the device, and we were like three guys and a female doctor, like originally founding the company, and we had our initial launch was sort of crowdfunding just to get it started and get a first audience. That was very male dominated. It was very
Yeah.
gadget, new gadgets, right? Like the guys sort of picked that up. And then over time, what we've seen is that now it's more women are buying it and more women are driving word of mouth. And we started seeing a little sort of percolating up use cases of various women's health issues, like endometriosis was an early one,
Mm,
which is a quite severe condition.
yeah.
Even the lighter versions of period pains and helping with period cramps.
Yeah.
Dr. Zulia started getting stories from people who had used it for fertility and to improve
Wow.
fertility, which we're also gathering and trying to, like, the challenge is to get it up at scale so you can do the large studies.
Yeah.
But getting more and more studies like this and reports back of use cases.
Mm,
And again, it goes down to having a device that you can wear in your intimate area and that can just be on, like you can literally penetrate and target that whole region. So whether it's
yeah.
ovaries or lower gut,
Yeah.
or I have a girlfriend that's been struggling with PCOS, like cysts, for
That was going to
example.
be my question.
Yeah, that has found it very, very helpful.
Hmm.
Again, it becomes anecdotal, and we're looking for ways to actually get this into broader research. But this hasn't been studied so much in the background literature. It's been mostly
Okay.
about inflammation and muscular conditions, performance. These kinds of very male-driven things are the ones that are the most substantiated in the literature,
Yeah.
right? So what we are discovering through our interaction with the user base is this whole host of other um, sort of other applications.
Mm,
And yeah, we have increasingly also female ambassadors that tell their story, right,
yeah.
and share it with others. We have protocols for it too in our membership programs. Dr. Zulia is always producing more guidelines for how to use it for these variety of types of conditions. So I think if your listeners are interested in exploring it for this, we have some tools to get started. It is a bit experimental, of course. You have to
Yeah.
find your own way, but there's no doubt from the feedback we have that this really helps a lot of women.
Mm, mm. Yeah, one of the things that you asked me earlier was like, how did it feel when you first started doing the
Hmm.
red light? And that would be that's my biggest invitation. Like even, you know, whatever, if you're wanting to explore red light therapy, notice how you feel, notice any changes that are coming up. I personally haven't done it enough. It was literally you that kind of introduced me to that idea because I've been doing it so much on my back and a little bit on my face, just the red light. But to use it, and I'm not someone that struggles like Thank God I don't have PCOS or I can't say that word.
Endometriosis.
Yes.
Yeah,
But just period pain too, and just like
yeah,
overall womb health is what I would say without
yeah.
noting a lot or having a lot of experience in this. If we're talking in terms of inflammation, that's a huge thing that can happen down in our lower gut too. I mean, our
Yeah.
regular gut and the lower gut, and like, your whole like pelvic bowl region. So I would just assume, knowing what I know about red light, that you're going to notice some differences.
Yeah, and I could say, I mean, we almost skipped over that part from the intro is the most documented effects of red light therapy or photobiomodulation, as it's called in the academic literature
Okay.
for these wavelengths, is inflammation reduction.
Mm.
Was established very early, like back to the 90s in studies that even compared was using lasers, but compared the effect of lasers at the same wavelength with pharmaceutical anti-inflammatory response, and
Ah.
found consistently that like the laser, was much more effective at treating inflammation. Pain relief is another, for pain relief, for any muscular skeletal type of pain relief. It is dramatically effective, and it's like the FDA has classified this kind of device in as like it's okay to talk about pain relief with it. They have the
Hmm.
classification because it's noted in the literature. That's a common benefit. That's actually why most people buy it initially, is because they have something painful they want to treat.
Yeah.
And then most users, at least of our device, they discover there are other things that it can help with also. But pain and inflammation, 100%, like what you can expect from a good near infrared light to give you. So already there, of course, it plays into the kinds of conditions you were talking about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which I think everyone deals with pain and inflammation these days.
There's
So,
so much pain and suffering out there. I mean, this is part of my own motivation for like jumping off a career that was going like really well, doing something else and finding this is something that people need.
yeah.
We need to have in
Yeah.
our kind of toolbox or in the family medicine chest or however you want to frame it. So
Yeah.
that's why our original idea was like one day this is a no-brainer to have at home, but we haven't quite reached there yet where the device is quite smart enough, right?
Yeah.
You have to experiment with lamps as you're doing now or panels.
Yeah.
So our first device, FlexBeam, is an iteration to show that, like, to demonstrate that you can have a wearable and you
Mm.
can make it easy to use. And our future innovation is going to try to help people connect their own data points they have on themselves to help validate it even more. Like they can actually see the effects in real time. We're able to start measuring it now
Mm.
in ways that I think it's still an early phase that we are in. And with your panel, for example, you can feel that it's working and doing something, but we're getting increasingly better at measuring exactly what it is doing. And
Interesting.
that's a part of an exciting part of the journey as well.
Mm-hmm. This isn't something that we talked about, and I feel like we should have even mentioned it in the beginning, but I want to hear your response to this.
Mhm.
What we're talking about, and you kind of made me think about this when you were saying the study with the inflammation pills or medicine versus this. Why is using red light therapy more beneficial, besides that you see more benefits that you just shared, but why is using NIR more beneficial than a pill or a medication? Or why try doing NIR versus going to a doctor for your PCOS?
Yeah, and I mean, hopefully we get to the point that also doctors will
Mm,
eventually prescribe red light therapy for something like PCOS. For now, it's just a tool they haven't learned, and they're
yep.
understandably skeptical. I think it's coming in, it's going in that direction that they're seeing that it's obvious that you should, as a as a patient or as a user or client of
Mm,
healthcare services. I'm not going to compare it to any specific kind of anti-inflammatory drug.
yeah.
Like you can read about that in particular studies that have been tested, but generally speaking, why would you take a pharmaceutical that has a range of different side effects that you know and you accept willingly when you can use light, which is just the sun's own energy, just concentrated. It's the same spectrum. It's it's the same source of energy as is in nature. It's just tailored and tweaked specifically for humans, and it
Mm.
has no side effects. Like there are no known side effects of this treatment at all in the literature. Uh, so most people we work with when they try it and they come across this alternative, um, it's like it's a no-brainer to use this instead.
Yeah.
That said, there are of course conditions that, I'm not going to say ditch all your pills because it's a complex thing and talk to your
Yeah.
doctor and all of that. But we see an enormous like overprescription of pills and over-reliance on pharmaceuticals. And frankly, I think most people also know that this is problematic,
Yeah.
right? And there is a hunger for other kinds of solutions.
Mm.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of you call snake oil out there, and people are making kind of medical and health claims with various dubious products. So it's a bit of a jungle to navigate what's really working and what is just hype.
Yeah.
But I think people are smarter and have more tools now to also do their research.
Yeah.
So I think over time, like devices like it sounds like you have a good one like panel that you're using, and I know our devices in the sort of premium category, and that these things that are really working will stand the test of time and they will get
Yeah.
broader acceptance.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my favorite things that my mom is very I grew up very holistic. I mean, I always make the joke that like I grew up like in a holistic household before holistic was a term.
Okay.
And she will always say, using like homeopathy or using an herbal remedy or, in this example using red light therapy, she would always say try it and it's either going
Mhm.
to work for you or it's not, but you're not going to have the negative side effects and you're not putting these chemicals or unforeign things. I mean, I love the illustration that you reminded that it's just sun and in a different, concentration. It's either going to work for you or it's not, but you're not going to lose anything, is what she always says. So I'm like, I agree with that. I really do.
Yeah.
It's either going to work or it's not. And there's a lot of research which I like that we highlighted in this conversation. Just that's how my brain works. Hopefully, hopefully everyone else got some benefit from getting the science behind it. I have one last question, but before we go to
Yeah.
the last question, where can people find you? Where do you hang out? Where can they learn more from you and learn about the panel that you have, the belt?
Yeah, our device is called FlexBeam, like a flexible beam of light, and the company is called Recharge Health. So our URL is recharge.health, and we have all the information you would want there about the device, and also linking to the actual scientific studies and group them according to categories. For anyone who's keen to learn more, we try to make this as impartial and objective as possible, and
Mm,
read about our ambassadors that we have many of, both in the health practitioner space and sports people who wouldn't endorse this if they hadn't actually felt the effect.
yeah,
Right, so at recharge.health is probably the best stopping point for people who want to learn a bit more about
perfect.
this.
Perfect. And I'll link it all below in the show
Yeah,
notes, of
thank you.
course.
Mhm.
Last question. If you're standing on a stage and you had the microphone for the next minute, 30 seconds, and you had one message to share with the world, what would you share?
Oh my God. Is this a short TED Talk?
It is a short TED Talk, 30
Yeah,
second TED Talk. Go ahead.
30-second
No
TED Talk.
prep.
Uh, I am a big believer in the sun and the health of sunlight, and I think we live in a culture that we've grown up accustomed to being very scared of the sun. There
Yeah.
are some negative side effects and things, but they can all be accounted for, and you can handle them and within reason, like if you're smart about it. I think one of the worst things in our culture is around light and lighting. Like we are surrounded by just very bad indoor artificial lighting that has never even been tested on humans. They've been designed for other purposes to be energy efficient and
Mm,
for all these different reasons. And they have negative side effects on us, generally speaking, to be overexposed to them. And sunlight is the ultimate healer, the ultimate source of energy. So I encourage people typically to, if it's any sort of health advice, it's like get outside. Like you can use something like a FlexBeam as great help for healing, but don't forget about it doesn't replace sunlight.
Mm,
So
mm. I love that.
get
Get
outside,
outside.
especially in the mornings. It's very, very helpful to set your whole circadian rhythm and everything. We wouldn't live if it wasn't for sunlight.
Mm. Yeah, I go out. It was 4 degrees Fahrenheit this morning, and I
Yeah,
I bundle up and I got my little hand warmers,
yeah,
and I go out every morning and take a walk. Honestly, it's
that's good.
invigorating. I used to hate it, but now I'm like I'm really awake because I just got plowed with freezing wind.
Yeah, and you may think it's the wind that's part of it and the cold and just the temperature, that's probably an aspect of it. However, when you walk outside and if you're in a green neighborhood or something, you're walking through infrared and near infrared and you're basking in all of that. And that's part of the energy your body uses to actually be a healing machine or a or really efficient at healing.
Yeah.
So with sunlight, it's like, of course, don't stay out so much you get burnt. But
Mhm.
it's just that energy is what we before we got pharmaceuticals about 100 years ago, they were invented. If you were sick and you're feeling down and out or low in energy, the usual prescription is go to a sanatorium, that's what they call it. It's a place where you just sit and bathe in sunshine in some salt water, maybe in some mud, and back into the sunshine because sun is the ultimate healer. And
Mm.
that's the crux of what we started out with and why we think it's important this technology also finds its way into every person's home.
Wow.
Not to be afraid of the sun.
Yeah, I think that's an important message. Thank you. This was such a great conversation. Thank you so much for coming on, and it was so great chatting with you.
Thank you so much for having me, Anna.